Good morning, everyone.
In unison, good morning.
In unison, good morning, Your Honor.
Yes.
Judge, before we get started this morning, there's one housekeeping matter it might be a good time to take care of.
Your microphone, sir. They can't hear you.
I'll go over here. Your Honor, a housekeeping matter that we probably should get taken care of. It's required by the court rules that we file a transcript of the rebuttal film. And I have submitted. I have here in my hand. I've given defense a copy, in fact. I gave it to them yesterday. An Exhibit 340A, which would match up to the rebuttal tape. And I'm submitting that as the transcript for that particular exhibit.
All right, thank you.
Your Honor. Your Honor. It should be marked for identification, but not received in evidence.
All right, I'll mark it for identification only.
I'd like to review the transcript, if I may, Your Honor.
You may, before it's admitted.
I gave it to you yesterday. You have a copy.
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
346A, is that?
340, Your Honor.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Miss Palanker.
Good morning.
When we left off yesterday, we were talking about the comedy camp and the Arvizos' attendance. During, and I believe you previously testified that camp operated for 2 months in the summer of 1999, and that the Arvizo children were there each weekend, 1 day a week.
Yes.
Okay. To your recollection, did they attend every session?
I don't think they missed one.
Okay. And were all 3 of the children members of the comedy camp?
Yes.
Did you personally work with them?
Yes.
And how did that work? What would you do when you would go with them at the comedy camp?
I'm a comedy writer, and primarily I would help the children come up with punchlines for their stories and work on their material with them.
So, they make up jokes and you help them make them funnier.
They tell stories from their real life, just like adult stand-up comedians would. They talk about things that they've observed or things that happen in their lives, and we try to twist the material into punchlines to create good pieces of material for the kids that adults will laugh at.
What is the goal of the comedy camp in working with these children?
To give the children self-esteem, confidence, creative thinking, things of that nature.
Is it effective?
Yes. I believe it is.
And why do you say that?
Some of these children don't really have a voice. They go through their day, no one's really listening to them. You give that child a microphone and put them on a stage, and everyone is watching them, and it really makes them feel like they matter. And I've seen it work.
Did you form any attachment to the Arvizo children?
I did, yes.
And how did you find them to be?
Objection. Vague.
Sustained.
How did you find them to be in terms of their personality? Well, maybe I'll back off that question and ask you, why did you form an attachment to these children?
These children are.
Objection. Relevance. Opinion.
Goes to this witness's relationship with the children.
Objection sustained.
Your Honor, I will be asking that this is foundation for an ultimate question regarding character.
Same objection.
Sustained.
All right. How would the children, would you notice how they would arrive at the camp?
They came by bus, city bus.
And did you note how they would leave?
I believe they left by bus. Took buses home.
Okay.
With their mom.
During the Christmas of that year that you met the Arvizos, did you do something special for the Arvizo family?
Yes. Fritz Coleman wanted to bring presents to a needy family, and he asked me if I had any suggestions, and I immediately thought of the Arvizos.
And did you talk with Mr. Coleman about what you were going to do for them that Christmas?
Yes. We discussed what we would get the family, what we would get for the children, where we would get it. And then we went to Best Buy, and we bought things. We had them wrapped, and we took them down there.
And what did you buy for the Arvizos?
We bought a microwave, a PlayStation, several games. Something else for Devellin, because we weren't sure if she would like the games, and that's what we did.
Do you recall about how much you spent?
Well, a microwave and a PlayStation would be $500, $600 perhaps.
And then you said something else for Devellin. Do you recall what that was?
I don't.
And I suspect you split the cost of these gifts with Mr. Coleman.
Yes, I did.
Did you deliver them?
Yes, we did.
With Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Anybody else?
His 2 children.
And was this before Christmas?
It was. I looked at my calendar, it was the 20th, about that time.
December 20th.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about delivering these gifts. Tell me how that came about.
We drove down there, and before we got out of the car, Fritz's younger son said he felt ill, so we didn't spend that much time in the home.
So were all the Arvizos present?
I don't think David was there.
Okay, so Janet, Gavin.
Gavin, Devellin and Star.
Excuse me. Do you know why Mr. Coleman's son didn't want to get out of the car?
He said he felt sick, and he was scared, a little scared of the neighborhood.
Did you see the Arvizos' apartment?
Yes, I did.
Would you describe it for us, please?
You walk in, and it's one room. And I remember there was a mattress on the floor on the left, and a mattress on the floor on the right. And the kitchen area was within the same room. And they had a couple of pictures of the kids drawn, just taped up on the walls.
Were the Arvizos happy to see you?
Yes, very happy.
Objection. Calls for speculation.
Overruled. She answered. Next question.
And why do you say they were happy to see you? What makes you believe that?
The kids started jumping on the mattresses.
Did you bring them any cards?
Fritz's 2 sons had made them cards.
Drawn the cards themselves?
Yeah. They drew the cards, yes.
What did they do with those?
They hung them up on the walls.
During the period that the Arvizos were visiting at the Laugh, at the comedy camp, did you ever see their father?
Never.
You had never even met him at that point?
No, I hadn't.
At the end of the comedy camp, was there, I believe you mentioned there was a graduation or some kind of party.
Yes. There was a performance, and there was. First it was a dress rehearsal performance one week, and then the following week, say on a Tuesday night, I believe, they were. The following week was the actual graduation. So all the kids in the camp, which, usually the kids who make it to the end of the camp with enough material to perform are about 12 kids. So about 12 kids performed before the regular Laugh Factory lineup.
Did all the Arvizos make the cut?
Yes, they did.
And where is that, so that party takes place at the Laugh Factory?
Right.
And about what time of day, do you know?
It was about 8 o'clock, between 7 o'clock and 8:30 at night.
Is it a celebration of sorts?
Yes.
Did Mr. Arvizo show up for that?
No, he didn't.
Was Janet there?
Yes, she was.
At some point, well, let me strike that. After the comedy camp was over, did you continue to have a relationship with the Arvizos?
I believe we spoke on the phone a few times, but I did not see them until Gavin got ill, which was in June.
So you had the experience at the summer, during the summer of '99 with the comedy camp.
And then Christmas.
And then Christmas. And then you spoke again when Gavin got ill.
Yes. Well, we spoke in between, but I didn't see them.
Okay. And who would you talk to when you'd speak on the phone with the Arvizos?
Janet would call and then she would put each of the kids on one at a time.
So tell me about how you found out that Gavin became ill.
Janet called me.
Tell me about that conversation.
Objection. Hearsay.
Offered to explain her conduct which followed this phone call.
All right, I'll overrule the objection. This is not offered for the truth of the matter. It's offered only to explain the conduct that follows.
She was screaming, "Gavin has cancer."
Were you upset by this?
Oh, yes.
And did Gavin go in the hospital after that phone call?
He was already in the hospital when she called me.
Did you visit him?
Yes.
During Gavin's stay at the hospital, how often would you visit him?
2 to 3 times a week.
And can you describe your relationship with Gavin over this period?
I think we became very close. And it was very difficult, because he was very ill. They gave him very extreme doses of chemotherapy, and he became very, very ill.
Did you become aware that he almost died?
Oh, yes.
At some point did you offer some financial assistance to the Arvizo family?
When Gavin was in the hospital the first time I went down there before his operation, I realized the gravity of the situation, and I decided to pull his father aside and ask his father what the situation was financially in terms of did they have full medical coverage, and what else needed to be done to help the family get through this crisis. And I discussed that I was in a position to give them some money so that David could take some time off work and be with Gavin, and so that they could fix up a clean room for Gavin.
Alright. I have several exhibits I'd like to show you now, Ms. Palanker. I've previously showed counsel item number 718 and 719. If I may approach.
You may.
Ms. Palanker, I show you People's Exhibit number 31. Can you identify that for me?
Janet Arvizo.
And I show you People's number 35. Would you identify that for me, please?
David Arvizo.
I show you People's Exhibit number 718. It appears to be a photocopy, not a very good one, of a check for $10,000, check number 114. It's dated June 15, 2000. Can you identify that for me, please?
That's my sister's, excuse me, my sister's my business manager. That's her handwriting, and that's a check that she wrote to Janet.
Okay. And I'm also going to show you a second exhibit, 719. Appears to be a check number 10,893, dated July 10, 2000. Can you identify that for me, please?
That was a check made out to David 3 weeks after the first check.
Okay. Also a check for $10,000.
Yes, for $10,000.
Alright. And are these copies, 718 and 719, are they fair representations as far as copies go of the checks that you wrote?
I imagine so, but I didn't make them out. I just handed them to David, so I really didn't look at them that carefully.
Okay. But you do recognize them?
Yes.
Thank you. Ask to move Exhibits 718 and 719 into evidence at this time.
No objection, Your Honor.
They're admitted.
Alright. Could we have the Elmo on, please, Your Honor?
Input 4.
Input 4. Alright. Now, Ms. Palanker, we have exhibit number 718 that we're showing at this time. I think you've identified that as a check that you wrote. The check indicates it is made out to Janet Arvizo. And I believe you testified that your sister wrote this check.
Yes.
And did she do it at your direction?
Yes, she did.
It was written to Janet Arvizo. Was that your idea to write it to Janet, or did someone ask you to write it to her?
David told me to.
Alright. And it's endorsed. If you can see underneath the endorsement, it appears to say, "Thank you, Louise, my sweetie Wheezy," with a heart over the Louise.
That's Janet.
Why do you say that?
That's her personality.
Okay. Is she prone to endearments like, sweetie Wheezy?
Very much so.
Okay. And the date of that check, June 15, is that the date that you delivered it to David?
Probably not. There might have been 1 or 2 days lag in between my sister handing me the check and me going back down to the hospital. Or sometimes my memory is confusing in terms of this, but it may have been at the Laugh Factory that I handed him the second check, because he started hanging out at the Laugh Factory at night.
He being
David.
Okay. Now, I want to go back to how this check was actually provided to the Arvizos and what preceded it. Tell me why you wrote a check for $10,000 to Janet Arvizo.
Why I made it out to her, or why?
No, why you gave them a check for $10,000. What was the purpose?
Because I was in a position where I could help this family, and I didn't want Gavin to ever be alone in the hospital. And I didn't see how a family of their means would be able to take off work and be with him if I didn't do this.
Did you believe this check would help provide funds for his medical needs?
No, I did not.
And why is that?
Because he was at Kaiser, and Kaiser provides full hospitalization.
And how did you know that?
I knew that because my uncle passed away at Kaiser, and I knew that because I directly asked David if Gavin needed any financial help for medical purposes, and he told me no.
Okay. Now, you mentioned a germ-free room. Tell me about that you thought the money might be used for such a purpose.
Yes. They told me that Gavin needed a room. And I had seen their apartment and I know they live in one room. And together we determined that possibly Janet's parents could provide such a room, but that it would have to be fixed up, and the rugs ripped out and tile floor put down, and some other changes. I don't remember exactly, but to make sure that dust couldn't get in, etc.
So at the time you wrote the check, was it your impression that David was working at that time?
He was working at that time at a Vaughn's warehouse, to my understanding.
And I believe you testified that you wanted him to take some time off to spend with Gavin.
Yes.
Was it your impression that Janet was working at that time?
It was my impression that she worked either as a waitress, or a hostess at a restaurant, or something like that. And that if she took time off work, she would lose her job. But he would be able to take time off work and then get his job back.
So tell me about the circumstances surrounding the act of your handing this check over to David. Do you recall where it occurred?
It was probably at the hospital. I probably pulled him out of the room and, did it privately.
Okay. But you do specifically recall giving it to David Arvizo.
Yes. Janet was seldom at the hospital.
Okay. Did you have an explanation as to why she was seldom at the hospital?
In the beginning, I didn't.
Objection. Objection. Calls for speculation and hearsay.
I'll strike that and move on.
Could I have both counsel approach for a minute? I want to address a ruling I made a few minutes ago.
Okay.
You can talk. Discussion held off the record at sidebar. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you. You may proceed, counsel.
Okay. I think where we left off, I'm covering the circumstances surrounding your actually giving the check to David. So you recall that it happened at the hospital. I think you said it was maybe a day or two after June 15. Do you know who else was around?
I don't recall that.
At that point, had any member of the Arvizo family asked you for any money?
No.
Had anybody influenced you in any way to give that $10,000 check to the Arvizos?
No, it was fairly spontaneous. It's just a decision I made after I saw Gavin and what the situation entailed and would entail for this family, and I just decided on my own to do it.
Did you have any strings attached to this check, to the giving of this check in terms of what the money had to be used for?
No.
And what did you envision the money would be used for?
So that he could support his family. He has 2 other children, and a wife, and so he could support them and not have to be at work every day.
So you didn't have any rules about what they spent that money on?
No, I didn't.
Did you later become aware of some items or some changes or some redecorating, anything of that nature, that occurred to that? Well, let me strike that. Did you later become aware of anything that the Arvizos used that $10,000 for?
I sent my contractor down to the home in El Monte, and when the room was finished they wanted me to come see it. And so I did. I went to see the room.
And what did you see when you got there? Well, maybe I should ask you first, did you go see the room?
Yes, I did.
And what did you see when you got there?
It was a very small room in a suburban tract home in El Monte. And I don't know what the room looked like before, but it looked like they had bought a nice big bed for Gavin, some bedding. They explained that the carpet had been ripped up. And I saw that the tile, and then the floorboards had been fixed so that it could be dust-free. And there was some kind of air conditioning, air filtration device right outside the window. And then a hose and a hole had been created near the floorboard so that the filtrated air could come in. And they had bought a big television and a DVD player.
Okay. And was that for Gavin's use?
Yes, but I believe the whole family would sit on the bed in there and watch it.
Okay. After you made that charitable gift to the Arvizos, did any member of the Arvizo family start asking you for money?
Yes.
Who was that?
David.
How often did that occur?
Within 2 weeks of having given him the first check, and very often from that point forward.
Now, you've previously identified David. Tell me, when was the first time you met him?
At the hospital right before Gavin's operation, the day that I offered him the money.
And how long had you known him before he started asking you for money?
2 weeks.
About 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So tell me how he would do that. How would he approach you for money?
He would say, I don't remember the exact words, but it would be along the lines of, you know, we're really strapped and we're not going to be able to make rent. And he would, I don't know if this is hearsay or not, but he would tell me that Janet had spent all the money.
Did he tell you what Janet had spent all the money on?
He told me she was going crazy, and she had spent the money on votive candles and things of that nature, praying.
Did you believe that she'd spent $10,000 on votive candles?
No, I didn't.
Where would these conversations take place?
At the hospital and at the Laugh Factory.
And so David would sometimes go to the Laugh Factory.
At night, yes.
Would he come with Gavin?
After Gavin's operation, he was in the hospital for about a month recovering. And then he had to start his first dose of chemo, so it was several months before Gavin was well enough to come to the Laugh Factory, or at least come between chemotherapy treatments. So at first for several months, he would just come by himself.
And at some point was there a benefit at the Laugh Factory for Gavin?
Yes. In October.
So that's October 2000.
That's when Gavin was finally well enough to be able to attend.
So prior to the time when Gavin was well enough to attend, if you can characterize it, about how many times did David come to the Laugh Factory?
15 or 20. Maybe once a week or so.
Was he given free admission, as far as you know?
Oh, yes.
Why is that?
Because Jamie does that for people.
At some time did you give this second check that you've identified to the Arvizos?
Yes. I explained to him that I could gift them each $10,000 per year without being taxed on it. And when he asked me for a second check, I realized I needed to put some boundaries on the situation, so I told him I could gift him $10,000, as I had already gifted Janet $10,000, and then that would have to be it.
Okay.
And I would tell him, you're going to have to, towards the end of, I would say, 4 to 5 months into Gavin's illness, I would repeatedly tell him, you're going to have to figure out how to get your family back into balance, and go back to work or make this work for everyone. Because I'm not going to be able to give you any more money.
Were you concerned about the Arvizos' finances?
I was concerned that they weren't managing them very well.
And why did you say that? Why did you believe that?
Because he asked me for a second check within 3 weeks.
Could we have the Elmo turned? Oh, it's already on. Then just the lights. Thank you. Alright. I'm showing you People's Exhibit 719, which you previously identified. Is that the second check that was written to David Arvizo? A copy of it, I should say.
Yes, it is.
And it's dated July 10, 2000. Do you know if that's the date that you gave it to him?
Probably thereabouts, because he was acting as if he was fairly desperate to get the funds.
And did you personally give him this check?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember where you gave it to him?
I believe I gave him that check at the Laugh Factory.
Was anybody else around, if you recall?
I think Gavin may have been.
Okay. Was Gavin well enough to go to the Laugh Factory at that period of time? Do you know, on July 10?
For some reason I believe he was there. It's a long time ago. I may have 2 incidents confused in my mind.
Okay.
Because I remember something involving Gavin after having given David the second check, but it might not have been that same night. Because I also remember that we had to wait till October to do the benefit because Gavin wasn't well enough.
Alright. Did you have any impression as to what this second $10,000 was going to be used for?
The same purposes.
Just for the family.
The room had already been fixed up, but he kept telling me they didn't have any money to live on. They didn't have any food and clothing.
As far as your contractor goes, do you know if he required to be paid for his services?
He charged them $800, which was just his bare costs. He did the labor for free, as a gift to the family, and he charged them $800.
Do you know if David ever paid him that money?
I don't believe he did.
After you gave David the second check for $10,000, did he make any further requests of you?
Yes.
More requests for money?
Continuously.
Did this cause you some concern?
Yes, it did.
Why do you say that?
Because it's very difficult to keep saying no. It's very awkward. And I had told him that that was going to be it. It seemed like the wisest thing for me personally to do in terms of the situation. And he just kept asking.
And did these conversations take place at the Laugh Factory?
Primarily, yes, they did.
Where else would they take place?
At the hospital. He'd pull me aside into a hallway and ask for more money.
Same kind, you tell me. What kind of requests would he make? How would he word it?
Is there anything else you can do for us? We're really having a tough time. That type of language.
Did he ever indicate that he had any ties to any organized crime?
Yes.
Objection. Leading.
Overruled. She said, yes. Next question.
What did he have to say about that?
His brothers were thugs, he told me, and gangsters, and that he disrespected that lifestyle, and wouldn't live that way himself.
Did you have any impression as to why he's sharing that impression?
He told me a lot of personal things.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the benefit, the first benefit.
Okay.
This happened at the Laugh Factory.
Yes.
And the approximate date was in October, you said.
I looked on my calendar, it was October 26, 2000.
And do you know whose idea it was to have a benefit?
Mine.
Alright, and the benefit's purpose?
To raise money for the family to live on.
Alright, and what was the plan? How was this benefit to take shape?
That Jamie periodically does benefits for various causes, be they organized charitable fundraisers or sometimes for an individual family in need. So, Jamie probably does a benefit every 1 to 2 weeks, so he's fairly schooled in how to pull it off. It's not that difficult. You just call the best comics you can think of, and have them donate their services for the evening. Publicize it as best you can. Usually you charge more at the gate than you would on a given night, because it's a benefit. And the money from the door is given directly to the benefactors, and Jamie and his club keep the money from the drinks and food.
Okay. And how did the first benefit go? Was it a success?
I believe it was. I don't know exactly how much money was raised, but I would put it in the neighborhood of $800 to $1,000.
Did Gavin attend this benefit?
Yes, he did. He performed as well.
How about Star?
Yes.
And Devellin?
Yes.
Was David there?
Yes.
How about Janet?
I don't believe so.
Was there a second benefit done under similar terms?
Yes, because I would discuss the situation with Jamie concerning David's repeated requests for money, and what we could do. And we ultimately decided sometime in 2001 or around the beginning of 2001 to throw a second benefit for the family.
Now, as far as the first benefit goes, you stated the gate would go to the Arvizo family.
Yes.
Do you know about how much it would cost to, as a cover charge or an entry fee to get into the Laugh Factory for such an event?
Well, Jamie would know that specifically. I would just be guessing, but I would guess 30.
I won't ask you to guess.
Yeah.
If you have an examination, that's okay. But if it's a guess, I don't need it.
$20 to $30.
Okay. And you also estimated around $800 to $1,000 was produced that night for the Arvizos.
I think so.
Okay.
Once again, Jamie would have a better number for you.
And were you present when that money was given to the Arvizos?
The second benefit I was, because there was an incident surrounding it that I recall. The first benefit I don't recall being present.
Okay. Let's talk about the second benefit. Whose idea was that?
Me and Jamie, again, in talking about the family. He visited them as often as I did, so we were very involved in this situation together.
So during the time that Gavin had come home from the hospital, I assume he was staying at his grandparents' house.
Yes, he would stay at the cleanroom.
Would you visit him there?
No, I didn't. Just the one time. It was really far from where I live and difficult, to get there. So I would wait until he was back at the hospital and I would visit him there.
And so he would periodically go back to the hospital from his grandparents.
Yes, for his next round of chemo.
Okay. How long would he be in the hospital for a round of chemo?
A week or 2.
Do you know how many rounds of chemo he had?
I'm going to say 9. But I could be wrong.
Alright. So, can you tell me give me a time frame as to this period of these 9 rounds of chemo?
About a year.
And do you know about when they began and when they ended?
They probably began in July, when he had recovered enough from the surgery, and ended maybe June of the following year.
Alright. At the second benefit, was it a celebration of sorts?
It was, but it was also a little bit difficult, because some people felt that the family was just having another benefit because David kept pushing for it.
Okay. Did you have some reservations as well?
I was always in favor of doing anything we could for the kids.
Had you formed any suspicions about David at this point?
No. Other than that he didn't seem to hear me in terms of, I'm not going to be able to give you any more money, and him trying to become increasingly close.
To you personally?
Yes.
So tell me about the second benefit. Was it as similar to the first, different? You tell me.
I think there was less big-name talent, because, I'm not sure exactly why, but the thing I do remember is that David was insistent that he wanted George Lopez to host it. And he kept pushing for that.
Did George Lopez perform at the first benefit?
I believe he did. He had been their coach to get them ready to graduate. He had worked with the 3 Arvizo children one-on-one, and he was very close to them.
And at the second benefit, did Mr. Lopez perform?
No, he didn't.
Do you know why?
I believe he and his wife Anne had become very aggravated with David.
Do you know why that was?
I don't know all of the reasons, but one of them had to do with a wallet that Gavin had left at their home.
Okay. So, at the second benefit was David Arvizo there?
Yes.
How about the 3 Arvizo children?
Yes.
Was Janet Arvizo there?
No.
Did you ever come to understand why she was not there?
I would ask. Once I became closer with David and I felt it was appropriate for me to ask, I would ask, and he would tell me, she's just having a nervous breakdown. She can't handle this, and she just prays a lot. And he would give me all kinds of different reasons that didn't make a lot of sense to me.
So his reasons wouldn't always be consistent.
They would be different. But I know Janet, and I didn't understand why she wasn't present.
Okay. So I think you said that you were present at the time David received the money at the Laugh Factory for the second benefit.
Yes.
Where did that take place?
Upstairs. There's a VIP area upstairs where you can see the stage, but there's also tables and couches, and you can talk and not disturb the performance.
And who was present when that money was given to David?
Gavin. I'm not sure if Devellin and Starr were immediately present. They were at the Laugh Factory, but they may have been elsewhere.
Was David delivered the money at that time?
Yes, he was handed the money in cash and checks.
From
Jamie.
Do you know if either of these benefits, if the children participated in helping out in any fashion?
They helped to the extent where, when you do a benefit, you have to set up a table in the lobby, so that rather than people purchasing their tickets at the ticket booth, they purchase their tickets from the volunteers sitting behind a table. And the situation doesn't have a staff, so Jamie asked me if I would sit behind the table and collect the money from the people as they entered. And I wasn't comfortable with that situation, and he commissioned the 3 Arvizo children and David to sit behind the table and collect the money.
Alright, so do you know about how much was collected at the second benefit?
I think it was about the same amount. $800 to $1,000.
And about what time was it that Jamie gave this money to David, in the evening or the day?
11:30. 11:30 in the evening.
In the evening?
Yes.
And tell me about that. Tell me about the circumstances of that.
Well, there was some controversy concerning the wallet. And I decided this would be a good time, since me and Jamie and David were all together, to clear up the controversy, because David was very agitated about the situation where Gavin had left his wallet. They had called George, and said, there was a wallet left at your house with $300 in it. And when Anne found the wallet, there was $3 in it, and they became irate.
So you're talking about Anne.
Anne and George.
Lopez.
Yes.
And they became irate. Why did they become irate?
I think they thought that David was lying about the amount of money in the wallet.
Did you confront David at this time about this problem between him and George and Anne Lopez?
I did. He still kept calling George and asking him to host the benefit, and they wouldn't return the phone calls. And I said, David, you need to leave it alone. Just let it go. And George was going to be doing a live broadcast the following morning. He was a disc jockey at that time. He was going to be doing a live broadcast from a remote location, which radio stations frequently do. And David wanted to go down there and personally ask George one more time, you promised you would host this benefit. And I said, don't go down there. He hasn't returned your phone calls. It's pretty clear he's not going to be at the benefit. But he went down there. And George got up from behind his broadcasting booth and just started screaming at him in front of everybody.
So did you confront David about this problem at that meeting?
I had Jamie come up, and I said, David, is this a good time to tell us what happened? What happened with the wallet? And David brought Gavin over, and he said, tell him. Tell him how much money was in the wallet. And Gavin said, I have a couple of wallets, Dad. I don't know what you mean. And Gavin just kept saying, I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean, Dad. I have a couple of wallets. Which wallet? Which wallet, Dad? And David kept saying, tell him about the wallet, Gavin. And he got increasingly enraged at Gavin. And when Gavin wouldn't talk about the amount of money in the wallet, David got really frustrated, and angry, and he stood up, and he turned to Jamie, and he said, I don't want your money, and he took the pile of cash and he threw it at Jamie.
Did you get the feeling that, well, let me strike that? What happened after that, after the money got thrown at Jamie?
Jamie turned and walked away. And David sat back down and his face was red. And I said, David, I don't know what's going on, but you might as well just pick up the money and take it, because Jamie's not going to take it back, and so that's what he did. And we never solved the mystery of the wallet.
Alright, so after this second benefit, did you continue to have a relationship with the Arvizos?
I think it became less and less frequent, because Gavin was getting well, and he started spending more time with Michael.
Okay. Michael, who do you mean?
Michael Jackson.
Okay. At some time during the early part of 2003, did you see the documentary, Living with Michael Jackson?
Yes, I did.
Did you recognize Gavin in that?
Yes. And I had TiVoed it. And I had been told in advance by a comedian friend that Gavin was in it, so I was prepared to see Gavin.
Do you recall what month that was in 2003?
Was it February? Around about that time. January, February.
And sometime after you saw that documentary, did you attempt to contact the Arvizos?
Yes, I did.
Were you successful?
No.
Why not?
All of their numbers had been disconnected.
So when was the next time you had contact with the Arvizo family?
I wrote a note to Janet and sent it to her mother's house, and she called me within a couple of days.
Do you know if she called you in response to the note?
In response to the note and because she felt that she was in trouble.
Do you know if she had received the note? Do you know that?
She had heard about the note from her mother.
Alright, so do you recall about what time of the month this phone call took place between you and Janet?
It may have been late February, early March. I can't really pinpoint it.
So tell me about the phone conversation.
Objection. Hearsay.
I'll lay a little additional foundation, Your Honor, but it will be offered as a spontaneous statement and as a state of mind exception.
The foundation objection is sustained.
Could you tell me about Janet's demeanor when she called?
She was extremely agitated, and she was almost whispering.
Could you tell if she was weeping?
Pardon me, I couldn't hear that.
Could you tell if she was crying at the time?
Objection. This is leading.
It's foundational.
Sustained.
Okay. Can you tell me anything else about her emotional demeanor during this phone call?
She may have been crying at some point in the conversation. She was very frightened.
Can you characterize her level of emotion in relation to Janet's normal demeanor?
Well, Janet's a very emotional person but this was different. She's usually emotional in a very ebullient, happy, charming type of personality. And this was fear. This is fear-based agitation.
Were you concerned?
It was an extremely disturbing phone call.
Tell me what she said.
Objection. Hearsay.
Spontaneous statement. Also offered for the state of mind of one of the victims. Or I should say, of Janet Arvizo.
All right, I'll allow the statement.
She started by saying, "Wheezy, if you have caller ID, this is not a safe line. Don't call me back here. They're listening to everything I say."
Did she go on to tell you more?
She said, "These people are evil. They're keeping us." I would say, "Where are the children?" "The children are with me." I said, "Are the children in school?" She said, "No," and that's when she started crying. I said, "Can I come and see you?" She said, "No." She wanted me to come and get them and meet them at.
Just a moment. Now you've gone beyond the proposed.
Oh, sorry.
You've gone beyond your offer of proof. And I'll stop her at that point. And I'll advise the jury that the statements that the witness just related to you that Janet said are to be used by you only for the purpose of establishing Janet's state of mind, not for the truth of the matter that Janet stated. All right, you cannot continue with the way you're doing it. Go ahead. Next question.
May I offer it under the spontaneous exception?
I've accepted that, but you're now into a lengthy conversation. The spontaneity has left. Start with another question immediately.
All right. So did she explain any further what was causing her agitation?
Same objection. Foundation.
Sustained.
Were you concerned after this phone call?
Yes, I was concerned enough to call my lawyer immediately following the phone call.
Why were you concerned?
She told me they were going to send her.
Objection.
Offered to explain this witness's conduct.
Hearsay.
The objection is sustained.
Did you do anything? Did you take any action after this phone call?
I told her to call me tomorrow at noon, and I would meet her at a location that we had predetermined.
And did you ever receive the phone call?
No, I didn't.
I should say from Janet the following day or any other day after that.
No, I didn't.
During that time period, did you take her remarks seriously?
Yes, I did.
Did you call anybody after this phone call?
Just my lawyer.
Why did you call your lawyer?
I felt that they were being held against their will.
And did you consult with your lawyer about this subject?
He told me that.
Objection. This is hearsay.
Sustained.
Ms. Palanker, over the years that you've known the Arvizos, have you had an opportunity to interact with Janet Arvizo under a variety of circumstances?
Yes, I have.
What type of circumstances?
I have seen her the whole summer at the Laugh Factory, probably 3 to 4 times at the hospital, and many, many phone conversations during her divorce from David.
Have you had an opportunity to interact with her children, the Arvizo children, each of them?
Yes, I have.
Also under a variety of circumstances?
Yes.
Have you formed any affection for Janet Arvizo?
Objection. Leading.
Sustained.
It's offered as a foundational for character evidence.
The objection was leading. It's sustained.
Have you formed any emotional bonds? Have you formed any? Let me just make it open-ended. How would you characterize your relationship with Janet Arvizo?
I feel that she's a lovely, caring person.
Objection. Non-responsive.
Sustained.
I guess the question. You have to answer the question specifically. How would you characterize your relationship with Janet Arvizo? Without saying what you think about her, how would you characterize your relationship?
We're friends.
And how would you characterize your relationship with Gavin Arvizo?
Friends.
Develin.
Friends.
Same with Star.
Yes.
Do you continue to communicate with the Arvizo family?
Yes, I do.
Has Janet Arvizo ever asked you for money?
No.
Have you ever had the impression that she was interested in your money?
Objection. Improper opinion. Relevance. Foundation.
It's a fairly.
Overruled. You may answer.
No.
How would you characterize your ability to judge character?
Objection. Relevance. Improper opinion.
Sustained.
Foundation for, all right. Ms. Palanker, during your period of time that you've known Gavin Arvizo, have you been able to form an opinion about him concerning his character for honesty?
Yes, I have.
And what is that opinion?
Objection. Relevance. Foundation.
Overruled. You may answer.
He's been honest in the face of others wishing him not to be.
So you believe he is an honest person?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross-examine.
Yes, please, Your Honor. Good morning.
Hey, how are you?
Fine, thanks. Miss Palanker, my name is Tom Mesereau, and I'm here to speak for Michael Jackson.
Uh-huh.
You've testified to your opinion about the character and honesty of Janet Arvizo.
Yes.
You've also testified to your opinion about the character and honesty of Gavin Arvizo, right?
Right.
Do you know anything about the J.C. Penney lawsuit?
Your Honor, I'm going to move to strike the question that counsel raised. You've testified to your opinion about the character and honesty of Janet Arvizo. She's never testified about that. I never asked her any questions concerning that.
That was his question, though. Your objection is overruled.
Did you know that Gavin Arvizo and Janet Arvizo sued J.C. Penney stores when Gavin was caught with unpaid merchandise in the parking lot, and that both claim that security guards at J.C. Penney's pulled Janet's breasts out of her blouse, squeezed her nipple 10 to 25 times?
Objection. 403, Your Honor.
I'm sorry. What's the objection?
Objection. 403, as well as improper.
I think the door is opened, Your Honor.
As well as improper impeachment without a good faith basis. I have a good faith basis.
And I think they've opened the door.
Just a moment.
Yes, Your Honor.
Let's be sure about one thing. Even though I allowed your question, there's been no character testimony allowed as to Janet Arvizo. Understood. You successfully objected to that.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, I'll limit my question.
Just a moment. I've got to scroll back. I wanted to see something else. But I've got to capture it here. If you'll bear with me a moment. The second thing is the objection under 403, as to going into the J.C. Penney case, is sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. May I inquire, Your Honor, with respect to the character testimony of Gavin, is it still precluded?
No. You know, I think maybe it would be better if you approach so we don't talk in front of the jury for a second, so I can give you some limitations on your questions. Discussion held off the record at sidebar. All right, I think we're ready to proceed again.
Miss Palanker, did you know that in the J.C. Penney lawsuit, Gavin Arvizo claimed that at the age of 8 he had taken merchandise out of J.C. Penney that was not paid for, and run into the parking lot so he could trick his father into purchasing it?
No.
Objection. Form of the question, did you know?
You should say, have you heard? But I'll allow the question.
No, I didn't know that.
Would it be accurate to say you don't know anything about that lawsuit? Right.
I knew something of it, but they had told me they were not allowed to talk about it.
Did you ever learn how much money, if any, was recovered by the Arvizo family in that case?
No, I didn't.
Objection. Relevancy as to credibility, irrelevant.
Overruled. The answer's in. Next question.
May I see those exhibits, Your Honor? Are they? Oh, here they are. Thank you. Miss Palanker, referring you to Exhibit 719, which is the $10,000 check that you wrote to David Arvizo. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Now, it says on the check that he's living at Raymer Street in El Monte, California. Was that your understanding when you wrote that check?
I would just ask him how he wanted the check made out or who he wanted it, where he wanted it sent, or, I don't remember.
I notice the date is July 10th, the year 2000. And this is the second $10,000 check you had written, right?
Okay.
The first one you wrote to Janet Arvizo on June 15, 2000.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Yes.
So there's really about a, 3-week difference
Right.
between the two. I don't see any address for Janet on the check to her, but I notice that David's address is Raymer Street. Did you ever question where he was living at the time?
Nope.
You just put on what he wanted, is that true?
Yeah, I did.
Alright, now, you testified that David asked you to make out the first check to Janet, true?
Yes, he did.
And you testified that you wanted to make the second check out to David for tax reasons, is that correct?
Right.
In other words, he wanted you to write a second check to Janet, but you couldn't do that without paying a gift tax because it was over the $10,000 limit, right?
Objection. Assumes facts not in evidence.
He didn't ask me to.
Pardon me.
Objection. Assumes facts not in evidence.
Overruled.
He didn't ask me to. When he started asking me for more money, I told him that it would have to be made out to him, so he never asked me to make out a second check to Janet.
Okay, now, you testified in response to the prosecutor's questions that David, to your knowledge, never paid the repairman who fixed up Gavin's room in El Monte, right?
That no one from the Arvizo family had paid him.
So it wasn't just David who didn't pay them. Janet didn't pay the person either.
He wasn't paid.
He just wasn't paid, period.
Yes.
Okay, now, at some point you learned that both of these checks were deposited into Janet's mother's bank account, right?
I only learned that after the private investigator informed me of that.
And that was an investigator for the defense, right?
Yes.
And you don't know whether David even had check writing ability on Janet's mother's bank account, right?
I didn't know any of those types of particulars, no.
So realistically, you don't know whether David even had the capacity to write a check on any of the $20,000 that you gave the Arvizos, right?
I never asked for any accountability. I just gave the money.
Okay. Did you ever ask Janet, why didn't you pay the fellow who repaired the room for Gavin?
I discussed it with the contractor, when I found out that he had not been paid. I said, I'll pay you. I said, would you like me to check into that? I just couldn't believe that he hadn't been paid, based on the amount of money that I had given them. And I said, would you like me to call them? He said, no, let's just let this be my gift to Gavin.
So he decided that he would just donate his work at that point.
Yes.
But your understanding was that when he did the work, he was expected to be paid, correct?
Oh, yes.
Now, in response to the prosecutor's questions, you indicated that David had called the Lopez's to talk about the $300 in the wallet, right?
Yes.
But when you were interviewed by the Santa Barbara sheriffs, you told them that Gavin had called the Lopez's to talk about that, didn't you?
I wasn't there, so I don't know which one of them called. So I may have told the story differently.
Okay, would it refresh?
It wasn't anything I witnessed.
So you don't really know which one called?
No, I don't.
Okay, I'm not trying to press you on this. Is there a reason why you told the Santa Barbara sheriffs that Gavin called the Lopez's to complain?
I don't recall a reason, no.
Okay.
One of them, I may have said that because it was Gavin's wallet.
Okay.
Is this a good place for our break?
Yes, sir.